Hey, so welcome back to Strategic Rap Intelligence. I am one Sir Robert Lee Taylor, your host of this show. Tonight, I want to talk about a funny subject: fake MCs, fake wannabe gangster rappers. It's an ongoing theme, it's a motif of ours, and I have one particular story in mind from my past that I would like to share with you because I think it's some of the funniest shit in the world. And it's also really, it's ultra absurd. So here we go. There's this guy who I was told was one of the emerging rappers at the time. I kept hearing about this dude. I was hearing, man, you got to hear this guy. He's got this little gimmick. You got to hear him. He's supposedly, we'll say he's from California, and then he made his way to Washington State. This is what I hear. And when you live in Washington State and you hear that people are from California, you have to be really skeptical. If you're an objective thinker, if you're a strategic thinker, if you're up on the intelligence game, if you're up on counter-espionage and trying to keep your camp, right and have all your ducks in a row, man, you gotta know. You gotta know this, man. There's a lot of people in jails and prisons, incarcerated, youth camps. They've never been out of the state of Washington. Well, okay, maybe they've been to Oregon, but maybe not. It's crazy, man, to think that someone lives in a state and he or she's never been out of that state. But if you look at the math, if you do the statistics, you'll find that there are, in fact, people who have never left the state. They've just been there their entire lives. And I've talked to a lot of people about this. In my travels, in the different cities that I've been to, people who understand intelligence and who know what I'm talking about, they know. If you look at the records, if you look at the math, there are those individuals out there, believe it or not, they've just never left their state. They're just so content, so happy just living where they live. So there are those who have wanted to leave, but for whatever reason they've been afraid to. Believe it or not, there are these people. They're kind of like hermits a little bit. Who knows what their pathologies are? Who knows what their exact fears are? But they've never left their states. And this is true. There are people like this. And it's just like, the show on Jay Leno, The Tonight Show. It's like jaywalking. Walk up to the average person and just ask them some simple questions and see what they know about the world around them. And you'll be surprised at how little, the average American knows if he or she's uneducated, not of the educated class. Well, hey, in the same vein, you have people who have never left their states, and it's true. Check it out. Do the math. Do some research. Maybe you'll find someone. Maybe you know someone already. So you get these kids who they get locked up because they're wannabe gang members. Okay, we'll use someone from Washington originally as an example versus someone who, like this so-called rapper, came from California supposedly and moved to Washington. Well, this is the converse of that. So conversely, take someone from Washington State, for example, who wants to be in an LA-based gang. This person doesn't know anybody from California. This person may think he knows someone from California, but maybe the people who he's talking to, maybe they're not really from California. It's just some dude who moved into his neighborhood and says, man, I'm from LA. And this young, impressionable kid, or maybe stupid young adult, is like, oh, for real, man? And the dude tells him, yeah, man, I'm from this gang. And the dude in Washington, who's impressionable, doesn't understand this dude isn't really from fucking California. He's from some small-ass town like, say, Marysville, right? And he goes on and he's talking about, yeah, man, whoop-de-whoop, I'm from this gang. I'm a 7-4 Hoover Crip, or I'm, rolling 90s, or I'm a Denver Lane, or I'm a Blood or Cedar Block, or I'm from Bompton, California. I'm a Blood, I'm a Crip, I'm a gangster disciple, I'm a vice lord. And this dude just eats it up. He just believes it because he's never met this cat. He's never met this dude from Washington State. This dude's been living in some small town right down the street for the past, his whole life. And this other guy doesn't know. So he thinks dude's from California. And dude's talking about all of his homies and shit like this from California. And how he's from this part of LA or maybe the Bay Area or Sacktown. All this shit that he's heard. All the research that he's done. Like a little square bear fucking nerd at the library. Reading fucking maps and whatnot. Now, it's cool if you're in college and you're getting a job working for, USGS so that you can do land surveys and Landsat images and cartography and shit like that. But if you're a sucker who hangs out at the library so that you can study fucking street maps so that you can claim to be in a gang that you've never been part of from some other state that you've never been to, that is, man, look, that is the cardinal sin and of the realm of wannabe gangsterism. I mean, man, it's one thing to be a wannabe gangster, but to go to that extent to fake the game is just, man, it's above and beyond. And we all know that. But look, I'm pointing this out because a lot of people don't know that people do this. So it's been known, if you look at the research and if you look at the history of Seattle, Washington. I used to read these articles when I was a kid, and I lived in California, actually. I lived in Alameda County, California. My father was stationed in the military in California. I was there with him when he was there. I was in Alameda living on the Naval Air Station. I've been all throughout California. Point being is that if you go back to the kids that have never left the state or had never left the state and they were faking these gangs, when I was a teenager, I read these stories in the newspapers in Washington state about how LA gangs were beginning to migrate, and gangs from other parts of California, they were beginning to migrate into Seattle. And what they would do is they would find these wannabe gangsters from Seattle standing out on the street corners trying to sell little marijuana bags and little drug sacks, just some petty minor league shit, some novice, beyond amateurish type shit that Seattle kids were trying to do because they had heard about these LA gangs. So these real gang members, these real LA-based gangs and real Bay Area-based gangs and gangs from other parts of California and the Midwest, Chicago and New York, they came out to Washington State and they found these kids in Seattle who were wannabe gangsters, and they got on their good graces and then they fucking jacked them. In the colloquial sense, they robbed them. Because, what were the kids in Seattle going to do? They don't know the game. They think they're fake. They're wannabe fucking gangsters back then, right? So, look, my point is that in Washington State, you've got a lot of cats, a lot of kids, a lot of young adults, some adults, and you ask them, you're like, hey man, so what gang are you supposedly from? And they'll tell you they're from this gang. And you say, well, who's your big homie? And then maybe that person will name someone. Maybe he'll freeze up for a moment and think about it, or she, because you got some chicks that want to be in gangs too. And then you ask them, well, how did you get recruited into your gang? What was the recruitment process like? What did you have to do? Did you have to do a drive-by? Did you have to shoot somebody? You have to do a bank robbery? Ask these people and look at the reaction times. Do the analysis on the reaction times. And ask them, so, what colors do you wear? Man, I've found people in the state of Washington, they claim to be gangster disciples. They'll tell you the gangster disciples wear red. You're like, oh, they wear red, huh? That's interesting. Well, ChicagoGangs.org says that, the folks, people from gangster disciples, they tend to wear blue and black. And, how do you get red from, gangster disciples? Don't you mean Vice Lord? They're like, oh, no, man. Oh, no. No, I'm part of, I'm part of GD, man. And GDs, they wear black, red, and gold. And you're like, oh, for real, have you ever been to Chicago? And then they freeze up. Nah, man, but the homies, blah, blah, blah. Man, when I was in Chicago, Illinois, when I lived in Chicago, Illinois, I never heard anyone use the word or expression homie. That's a West Coast thing. They don't even, I never heard that expression anywhere I went. And I've been out west. And if you're from Chicago, if you're from the Chi, you know what I'm talking about. I've been out west. I've been to K-Town. I've been to the Holy City. You know what I'm saying? I've been to the South Side too. I've been to all sides. So you got these kids back in Seattle, man, faking these gangs, talking big shit like, nigga, this is Seattle, the she-town, nigga, the 206. And you're like, man, I remember you when you were a little kid and you used to hang out at the Northgate Mall. You've been living in Washington State your whole life and you've never been to Los Angeles, California. I've been to Los Angeles, California. These other kids, they've never been to Los Angeles, California, man. A handful of these kids have traveled to LA and they've been brave enough to do it. But most of them, man, 95% of these kids in Washington State who claim to be from fucking LA and part of these LA-based gangs, come on, man, I'm from Washington State. I've been all over the state. I've been to all the rap shows, all the functions, all the hip-hop events, man. Motherfuckers know me. Niggas know me. And man, look, I know some real cats from out of state who live in Washington State. They're few and far between, and everybody knows that. Okay? Don't be trying to call me out, because I'm calling y'all fake-ass wannabe fucking gangsters out. If you's a real gangster, then that's one thing. Most of y'all fake.